Don Franceschi is here. He's the author of 2 Amazon bestsellers. There's From Awful to Awesome, 9 Essential Tools for Effective Presentations for Inexperienced, Infrequent, and or Ineffective Business Presenters. And he's also recently published From Awful to Awesome, Speaking Safety Successfully for anyone who needs to speak about workplace safety. So if that sounds like you, then this might be the most important podcast that you ever watch or listen to, because Mr. Don here, he's a former TEDx Sonoma County speaker coach, organizing committee member, Advanced Communicator Gold Award from Toastmasters, and he's developed multiple effective presentations and public speaking classes throughout the state of California. And we need to get this whole public speaking, this presenting thing figured out. So if you have the nerves, if you don't know what to say or how to say it, then Mr. Don here is here to help us out. So Mr. Don, glad to see you, glad to speak with you.
Hi, Robert. How are you doing today?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for asking. You know, we met in the Sacramento area doing the public speaking, the speaker kind of presenter, build a business around it.
We were down a Katrina Sawa Speaker Success Conference, I guess was the one that we were both a part of.
Yeah, and I met Katrina doing this podcast. I started a podcast in 2012, and then 2016 I started getting guests, and she was maybe like my 120th guest or so, and then I was like, whoa, we live close by, and she says I do these events, and it was only 90 minutes, and then I drove up, and I still remember you giving your speech. She had some kind of package where like you would go up and do your demo reels, and it was just, it's so much fun. And a lot of people don't know that there's just this whole world that can open up, right? If someone embraces this idea of public speaking, you can give events, you can give seminars, you can speak as a guest, you can do it for free and sell something, you can get paid. There's all these opportunities available, but then they also say that the public speaking is a greater fear than death, right? They say that number 2 fear is death, number 1 is public speaking. And so we're here to change that, right? It's time to change some minds and get people the help that they need. And so what do you have to say if someone says, hey, Don, help me out. I don't even know where to begin with this whole public speaking, presenting concept. What do you say to someone who just feels completely lost?
Yeah. Most of the time I start with speaker anxiety because, to be honest, that's usually their first issue and the first concern that they have. So I've noticed when I give presentation skills workshops that if I don't talk about speaker anxiety right at the beginning, the people with speaker anxiety aren't listening to anything I say until I address it. So I started putting that at the very beginning part of my workshops. And I usually start by going over 4 core speaking principles with the folks. And the first one is, it's okay to be nervous. That's number 1. It's okay to be nervous. Sometimes just realizing that can lower your speaker anxiety down. I have one of my close friends used to do stand-up comedy years ago, and he did it on stage a few times with the late Robin Williams, probably the best stand-up comedian ever, right? And he said Robin Williams would have terrible speaker anxiety, stage fright, whatever you want to call it, just before he would go on stage. So if it's like, okay, the best person in the world gets it, you know, if you feel like you're the only one that gets speaker anxiety, I hate to break it to you, but you're not that special, you know. It happens to almost everybody. So that's the first thing, just it's okay to be nervous. And the second one is, it's not about you as the speaker. Now, I know that's kind of weird concept because, like, when you're standing in front of an audience, let's say, and there's 40 people all staring at you, it really does feel like it's about you, right? You're standing in front, you've got all their attention, all the eyeballs on you, but it's not about you as the speaker. Okay, Robert, I'm going to put you on the spot. If it's not about you as the speaker, what is it probably about?
Audience.
There you go. That's what it is. And if you can remember that, it's not about you, it's about your audience, that can help lower that speaker anxiety down. If you can just kind of remember that it's like you're giving your audience a gift, and it's a gift of your knowledge, your experience, your perspective. And if you can think of it that way, it kind of takes the focus off of you as a speaker and puts it where it really belongs, which is on the audience. So that's the second item that we go over. And then the third one is the audience is rooting for you. And it's really true. I mean, when I worked for the state of California for 29 years, I probably attended 1 million and that's probably rounding down, meetings and presentations. And not once did I walk in there thinking, oh, wow, man, I hope this presentation sucks. I mean, who would do that, right? I mean, nobody does that. They're rooting for you. They want it to be worth their time to be sitting in the audience and listening to you. And if they can get some, be educated, be entertained, that's all good. So they're rooting for you. They want you to succeed because guess what? If you totally crash and burn as a speaker, guess what? That's not fun for you, but that's not fun for the audience either. So that's the third rule. And then the fourth one is kind of I don't know, should I quote it? Don Franceschi special here, and because no one else talks about it. And it's uncertainty creates anxiety. Uncertainty creates anxiety. And so basically, the more uncertain we are about a situation, the more anxiety we have. So in most of my workshops, I go over ad nauseum all the preparation work that you should do before you give a presentation. And by doing that homework, that helps lower your speaker anxiety. And guess what? It has the advantage of making your presentation more effective too. So that's the very first thing I go over. And then, of course, you can get into specific tips going along with the speaker anxiety too. One of them is if you're going to start your presentation, use a prop. I do that all the time. For one thing, it gets the audience's focus. Do I have one right in front of me here? I think I do. So I know for your listeners, you won't see, but I'm holding up a little, what do you call it? A little timer on here. I use that for a couple of my presentations. So when you use a prop, the audience is immediately drawn to it. It gives you something to do with your hands. And it's just a very effective way to get that audience's attention because they'll pay a lot of attention to you when you pull out a prop. So if you can have a prop like at the beginning, that can help you get into the flow. And then the last, I guess, suggestion kind of in this whole umbrella of speaker anxiety is have a pre-presentation routine. It doesn't have to be like mine. It can be your own routine, but I'm sure you have one, Robert, with all the ones that you've done. Maybe, kind of get yourself, some people get all hyped before. I'm kind of in that category. So usually we do like a little jumping jacks or a little shadow boxing for a minute. I did it today before I talk. And it just burns off a little nervous energy. And then I take some deep breaths. I breathe in for 5 seconds, kind of hold it for 5 seconds and breathe out for 5 seconds. And so the bouncing around kind of burns off the energy and the deep breathing kind of helps get me focused, if that makes sense. So those are, usually I start when we talk about presentation skills, I start with the speaker anxiety component because again, nobody seems to listen to anything I say till I address that because so many people have it. I have it too. That presentation that you watched for Katrina Sawa, I hadn't been on like a videotaped part of a presentation I'd done. I was pretty nervous, but I really prepared well. And the cool thing is when the guy was putting the mic on, if you kind of remember that, there's a guy that was putting a mic on all of us, and he was the one that was operating the camera. I think he thought for sure I was going to roll up in a ball and cry when I got up to the front. And when I came back, he said, "Whoa, you surprised me." And it's because, you don't let your speaker anxiety totally go away. You just want to make it manageable, if that makes sense. A little bit of energy is not a bad thing for a presentation, but you just don't want it to consume you so you can't still perform.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it seems like expecting it to go away is setting yourself up for failure, right? It sets the goal just unattainable. It might as well be on the moon. And so you're saying
right.
Something that's more realistic is manage it, use these techniques, and redirect it. And you have these 4 excellent reframes, so to speak. So that way we can say, well, I know that you're the most terrified about this more than so many things in your life, but hey, people need your help and they want you to succeed. And by the time it's done, you can have fun and communicate this and make the presentation despite your limitations and just enjoy it for everyone, right? And have the prop and have the fun way of jumping in. And even just the reasoning behind you putting that anxiety first, that brings to mind just this idea that, well, there's a reason why people need you to speak, right? Because anyone can research any topic, but they don't necessarily know what's important or what to tackle first, versus if there's
Yeah.
someone like you giving a presentation, we're kind of forced to focus. And then there's someone like you who's seen all these nuances of workplace safety, for example, and you say, hey, here's where we'll start, and we'll get this quick and easy win, and then we'll move on. And there's just something really valuable about a speaker giving a presentation, and they have all these years, decades of experience, versus just opening up a book, isn't there?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And in fact, with that, uncertainty creates anxiety. Once I get past the speaker anxiety part, I typically tell them that, what you need to do is your homework before you give the presentation, and just the things you were just talking about. You need to, kind of in this order, that's how I would order it. You need to know your purpose, the goal, which you want to accomplish. Ed Tate, a well-known Toastmaster, a world champion in public speaking, called it the KFD, which you want the audience to know, feel, and do at the end of your talk. That's the goal. That's what you want to accomplish. So you have to be clear on that. If I can share a quick story, I had a new boss on my last year for the state of California, and he asked me to give a talk to this group. So I did, and he was in the audience. And man, I'll be honest, I thought I rocked it. I had great interaction with the audience, and we were over, and it was finished on time, and everybody was happy, and everybody walked out smiling, and I was smiling. So I walked up to him afterwards, and the room all cleared, and it was just him. And this is embarrassing, but I kind of turned my shoulder because I was waiting for that pat on the back that I was kind of actually hoping to get. And I said, "Well, what'd you think?" And he just kind of looked at me like right through me, and he goes, "That's not at all what I wanted you to talk about." And I thought, oh, ouch. So shame on me for not being clear what the purpose of that talk was. And to be honest, shame on him too for not making sure I was clear on what the purpose of that talk was. So that's the first thing. And you can see as a speaker, just what you were just talking about. If you are not clear on the purpose or what the goal is or what you're trying to accomplish, there is absolutely no way your audience can be, right? I mean, it makes, common sense. You need to know first before you can guide the conversation, the presentation to where you want to go. So that's the first thing. And then we get into creating a message, usually some like a 10 words or less tagline. So first you need to be clear on what it is you're talking about. And it's got to be that 10 words or less. That's the concise part. And then usually catchy, some kind of rhythmic, some rhythm to it, some mnemonic device, repetition, alliteration, something like that. Craig Valentine, a person that I also respect greatly in Toastmasters, he has a bunch of presentation he gives. And I remember one of them was, what got you here won't get you there. It's short and sweet and to the point, and it's a takeaway message. When someone asks you later, well, what did Craig Valentine talk about? You can say, well, what got you here won't get you there. I mean, you can repeat it back. And if it's memorable and it's, repeatable, that's great. And then once you've got your message lined up, then you need to do your research on your audience and stage. So the audience, if I share another quick story with you, I was given a talk for San Jose Junior College Business Management Department. And I asked them, I said, hey, if you were would you give the same talk on global warming to a group of second graders as you would scientists? And the group all laughed. And I said, why are you laughing? And someone said, well, that wouldn't be appropriate. And I said, oh, well, if you don't research your audience ahead of time, how would you know? Complete silence. So you do need to research your audience and get a feel for them. Generational makeup, educational makeup, what their concerns are, what they do. I had one presentation I gave again at the San Jose Junior College, back-to-back presentations, and the first group was all around my age. I'm 60 plus here. So they were all around my age. So I thought for sure, and I researched that group, but I didn't research the second group. So that's on me. I assumed they would be the same. So I walk in and the oldest person in that group was 23. And I was like, uh-oh, because I had several cultural references to things that I thought, okay, they're not even going to know what I'm talking about. I have this one where and I don't know if some of you know, like Gumby and Pokey. I had this like little, and it went on. It was used as an example of being flexible. And so I had the Gumby out, and I asked the young man in front, I said, hey, just before the presentation started, do you know who this is? And he looked at me and goes, I said,
Oh
okay, I got
no.
to make some changes on the fly here because I was orienting my talk to an that was not in front of me. So if that makes sense. So you need to, know your audience and know their experience level. And then the last thing is to know your stage. You need to, whether it be today, a virtual stage, or whether it's, an actual physical stage, where the locations are, the equipment, projector, laptop, things of that nature. I will say for a stage issue, there's two solutions that have solved almost every stage issue I've ever had. And the first one is to scope out the stage ahead of time. So if you're able to physically go and check out, the room or the place where you're giving a presentation, a lot of safety presentations can be anywhere, out in a construction site, could be out in an agricultural field, in a shop, whatever. But if you're able to do that ahead of time, that lowers your speaker anxiety too. And it allows you to troubleshoot for your presentation. So, and people tell me, well, I can't do that, Don. I can't scope out my room ahead of time. And I said, I get it. I had to do a presentation in Fresno, which is 4 hours away from me. And I'd never been to the office, let alone that particular room. But guess what? Everyone's got a smartphone, right? I just asked them to take some pictures of the room, speaker's perspective, audience perspective, where the outlets are, where the screen is, things like that. They sent me 5 or 6 of them. That was so helpful for preparing for my presentation. And it was an important one. And you know what? When I stood on that stage, this sounds corny, but when I stood on that stage, having seen the pictures, I felt a little more comfortable because I felt like I had already been there. So that's first one, scope out the stage ahead of time if you can. And then the second one is to arrive early. And most people I'll admit as you can tell, I like to have fun with the presentations and everything. But
Yeah.
that's one thing it's my pet peeve. I hate presenters that waltz right in, 10 seconds before they're supposed to, speak. And it's this mass commotion. Where's the presentation clicker? Can you move some chairs? Can you do the handout? Pull the screen down. Wait, why isn't the laptop hooking up? It drives me crazy. It's like, arrive early and get yourself all set up ahead of time, especially if you have speaker anxiety. Running around like a chicken with your head cut off just before you speak is not conducive to a nice, calm, relaxed speaking engagement. So you want to get there early. I was doing a presentation for our Sacramento district office. I live in Santa Rosa. And I happened to be at the Sacramento office the night before. So I thought, okay, so everybody was mostly gone. It was just a few folks left. And I said, oh, what a perfect opportunity to set up the room ahead of time. So I did that. It took about an hour, got everything all set up, drove home, and I was kind of patting myself on the back. Oh, what a good job. You got all set up for the meeting ahead of time. And the alarm woke me up, and I thought, you know what? You could sleep in a little bit more. You've got the room already set up. But when you give talks on effective presentations, you feel obligated to have an effective presentation, and that you do the homework. So I went ahead and got up my normal time, got there, opened up the door, and I was very surprised that the janitors had come in after I had and rearranged the room the way it was before. So I had a few choice words that erupted out of my mouth, to be honest. But after that, got the room all set up. And when the people came in for the presentation, they had no clue on the drama that happened beforehand. And that's the way it should be. Get yourself organized and get set up ahead of time. So anyway, we get into like the message, audience, and stage. If you do some of that prep work, not only is your presentation going to be more effective, but it can really help with the speaker anxiety component of it.
Oh yeah, all that's helpful. So you're saying that it helps to prepare both in terms of the actual like physical setup and delivery, but also in your messaging. And we've all seen both of those extremes, right? We've seen someone that's unprepared, last minute, hadn't thought it through, versus you just put in a little bit more of that tediousness. And as you were explaining some of that, you're giving me flashbacks to as soon as I became a parent, I was like, anything I have to go do, I'm leaving half an hour before I need to be there, right? And so I
Mhm.
take my kid to school, and you see all these other minivans and parents, and they're running red lights. They're so stressed out, and I'm like, well, I just left a tiny bit earlier, so that way I accounted for the inevitable surprises that creep up. In the same way the janitor rearranged, and you went with it, right? Instead of it
Yeah.
being an emergency, it was just an annoyance, just an inconvenience. And you figure that when someone gives a presentation, it looks easy, right? They show up, it's effortless, it's simple, but there's a lot more that went into it, such as
Yeah.
the preparation, which is beneficial for the output, but also for your own self as a speaker. And what's great about you, Mr. Don, is, there's the simplicity, there's the clarity, but I love how, just like a good speaker, you work stories into things. So that way, for me listening to you, there's like two layers of it, right? There's what you say, and then there's kind of that additional lesson. And so from what I get from you is that it's helpful to have fun and to work in a little bit of the self-deprecation and a little bit of the playfulness, because
Yeah.
it helps everyone involved, right? It helps get that message
Yeah.
across. And so we're here on a podcast. Well, you only have a few minutes left, and I want to make sure that we focus on what's important to you, because you do the speaking and you do the safety presentations, but I want to make sure that we cover the bases that you want to cover. And so in these final minutes of our conversation, what questions should I be asking you? I just don't know what to ask you.
Well, my second book is geared towards folks who speak about safety, workplace safety. And one of the chapters in the book is, what's the difference between a safety presentation and a regular business presentation? And I asked several of the experts, 20 folks, 20 experts that I ended up interviewing for the book, what their thoughts were. And almost universal agreement is, typical business presentation, there's usually facts, figures, charts. There's like information that's being relayed to you, and it's done in a typically like a business-like manner. It's a business presentation. Whereas a safety presentation, the stakes are so much higher. As I quoted in the book, Warren Mayfield, a person who was my boss a few times during my career with the state of California, said that if you blow a business presentation, you might lose the sale. If you blow a safety presentation, someone could lose their life. So the stakes are just so much higher on a safety presentation. And you need to get the folks' emotions involved, because you're talking serious stuff. You want these workers to go home to their families at the end of the day, to be with their family. There was, when I was doing the book, I wrote a lot of it during the pandemic. And so the last year for stats that was before the pandemic struck, which 2019, and they had on here, I had every 7 seconds a worker was injured in the United States, and every 99 minutes a worker died. So
Jeez.
that's pretty serious stuff. So as you said, take the process seriously, whether it be a safety presentation or any presentation, take the process seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. So you can have some fun, be relaxed, and that'll come across when you give a presentation. But take the actual, getting ready and the homework and the things you should do ahead of time. Take the prep part of it. Take that seriously.
And how do you come up with the catchiness? Like even what you just said there, right? Of like, take the process seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. And then there was like the Craig Valentine title of his presentation. Is that a matter of like delivering the speech and the repetitions, or of thinking it through deliberately, or like how do you land on some of this catchiness?
Actually, both. It's both. I'm often looking for a headline, like a 10 words or less phrase that people can remember and walk away with. So as I'm giving a talk, or as I'm doing the prep for a talk, I often think, well, what would be a good like little phrase to use here that would be helpful? And then some of it is you give the presentation, especially if you're doing multiple presentations on the same topic, and over time you start to naturally condense and just get to the crux of what you're talking about. So it's both. Some of it's prep and some of it's just in the course of doing it, you start to hone in on and make it a little more memorable. And that's the goal. Because if it's not memorable, it's wasted. And if for a safety presentation, you can't have that. You can't have that.
Oh yeah. So what's the goal is for it to be memorable, for what you say to stick. And you give me flashbacks to, in high school, we had to write all these essays, like these big long, like, you sat down in a test and had to write like 3 times 3 page essays in like 90 minutes. And it took a lot of like developing the skill, but they said that like the biggest problem, like when they grade those essays, and it was for like some like college credit stuff, they were like, well, if you are a high school kid and you start writing over here, and then you talk and you talk and you meander and you go, and it's not clear where you ended up, they just basically fail you. But if you say, hey, here's the prompt, here's the answer, and then everything you write is in relation to that, and you keep making those points, and you conclude back where you started. They're like, that's all more held together, and it seems like that's what we want to do when we present, and when
Yeah.
we want to refine things and naturally distill and simplify and make it a lot of fun. We want to say, well, I'm not going to wing it in my presenting or in safety, and instead I will deliver something that's polished and memorable and fun and gets people to remember, and even more importantly, get people to take action, especially when safety is concerned, so that way the lives are not lost. And so we've been speaking with Don Franceschi, and he has these two books. One is called From Awful to Awesome: Speaking Safety Successfully. It gives you the tools, tips, and techniques on how to prepare, structure, and deliver an effective safety presentation. There's these 5 sections that help you out with that. And then there's From Awful to Awesome: 9 Essential Tools for Effective Presentations. We're talking about the creation and the elevation to help you become an awesome presenter and save the world one presentation at a time. Because
Yeah.
have you ever attended an awful presentation? Maybe it was even yours. Well, this is a roadmap for inexperienced, infrequent, or ineffective business presenters. It's From Awful to Awesome: 90 Essential Tools for Effective Presentations, and From Awful to Awesome: Speaking Safety Successfully. And if someone wants to know more about just what you do, the value you provide, I know there's the website fromawfultoawesome.com. So is that a logical next step, or where should someone go after
Yeah.
listening to this podcast?
Yeah, if they wanted to go to the landing page for my second book, it's that fromawfultoawesome.com/safety. And that also gives you a link to the main website too. So that you can see a little bit more of what I'm about, what I do. I'm available on LinkedIn as well. Don Franceschi. And it's just, and of course, someone can send me an email, don@fromawfultoawesome.com. Look at how easy that is to remember. So Don
Right.
at fromawfultoawesome.com. You can send me an email. And yeah, my goal is just to make people more effective, because I really do think with all the issues and problems in the world, not just in safety, but becoming a effective, engaging, and entertaining speaker is one way to help solve some of those problems. I do honestly think that save the world one presentation at a time. I think it's almost an impossible goal, but that is my goal. So if I can help
Good.
you do that, reach out.
Yes, you're to be, you say, effective and engaging and entertaining. Is that right?
Yeah,
And
it's
and
very
that way,
helpful.
yeah, and that way it's not about you, right? It's like, sure, you have this anxiety and you manage it, but what's more important is this ideal outcome, which is, despite your fear, despite the small annoyances, mistakes, oh, my presentation clicker is not working, I'll just go
Yeah.
without slides this time. Will I
Yes,
flood that line? No one will even notice. I'll keep going to
that's
get to
right.
that finish line of, you change some lives, you affect other people, and you change the course of what they were doing, where otherwise they might have made that safety mistake, or they might have not
Yeah.
learned something, but you did, because you gave this excellent presentation that came alive. And Mr. Don Franceschi helps you out by getting there. It's from awfultoawesome.com/safety. And if you want to look him up on LinkedIn, that's Franceschi. That's one of those long Italian last names, but you
Definitely.
type it in and you go and add him, and he's definitely a person you want to have in your orbit and speak to if you want to refine and improve these speaking skills. That way you can change some lives. That's from awfultoawesome.com/safety. And before I let you go, Mr. Don, it's time for the scary part of the show, where I try to stump you by asking about a fun quote or lesson that has served you. So what comes to mind as far as a fun quote or lesson?
Well, I would say it would be, as an Eagle Scout. I was an Eagle Scout. I think you were too, weren't you, Robert?
We're both
You-
Eagle Scouts. We're both Toastmasters.
we're
We have
both
lots
Eagle
in common.
Scouts and
Yeah.
Boy Scouts. That's right. And you guys remember the motto from that?
Be prepared.
Be prepared. And I think that is the thing I would leave folks with. If they were more prepared for their presentations, it would go so much better. If they would actually rehearse before they gave a talk, just all the things, look people in the eye. Or if you're doing a virtual presentation, like know where the camera is, so you know where to be looking. Just all those little things. If you do that prep work, if you be prepared, it will make so much more of a difference and an impact. And if we're not going to be impactful speakers, then what's the point?
Right. So that's very helpful. Be prepared, go through and know all those little nuances, right? Know where to look at the camera, etc. And then because you did that dry run, you'll be a lot less nervous and you'll be going with the flow and you won't let one little surprise derail you. So the next step is to go to fromawfultoawesome.com/safety. Find out about speaking safety successfully. Check out that page, check out that book. You'll love it. That's Don at fromawfultoawesome.com. And his phone number, if you want to give him a quick call or text, is 707-293-5532. That's 707-293-5532. John Franceschi, presentation skills trainer, author, coach. He's here to save the world one presentation at a time. Take this seriously. It's important, and you'll get to the point where you give amazing speaking presentations and help other people. So thanks very much, Mr. Don, for showing up, stopping by. I appreciate what you brought for us.
Thank you, Robert.